Jack Layton departs the House of Commons for the very last time. Family, friends, colleagues, and regular Canadians gathered to watch the final farewell. Layton's motorcade made a short journey across the Ottawa River to Gatineau, giving a symbolic nod to Quebec before making its way to Toronto. In Toronto, Layton's casket will lie in repose tomorrow and on Saturday morning at Toronto City Hall, before the state funeral at Roy Thompson Hall, which will be Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Now, state funerals are usually reserved for Governor Generals, for Prime Ministers, and for Cabinet Ministers. It's an unusual move for an opposition leader to be given the honor. So why did the government decide to go against protocol and offer Jack Layton's family a state funeral? The Prime Minister said it's because of the popularity of Jack Layton. Let's find out from the man who's behind much of this, the Minister of Heritage and Culture, James Moore. Minister, good to see you.
Pleasure.
You've seen the media reports, some questions raised about whether it was the right thing to do to grant a state funeral to Jack Layton's family. Can you give us an idea as to why the Prime Minister made this decision?
Well, historically, they are reserved for governors general or fallen prime ministers. But this is the prerogative of whether or not to extend this offer is entirely in the hands of the prime minister. And I think, I think this is a pretty easy question to answer. I think people are voting with their feet on this matter. I think the public is, you see it in Nathan Phillips Square, you see it in George Street, you see it here in Vancouver in Robson Square, you see it on Parliament Hill. I think Canadians are coming out to express their gratitude to a man who gave his life to public service, and more than gave his life to public service, but also in the final, what turned out to be the final months of his life, offered his public exposure to his experience in his fight with cancer, and I think that's a truly remarkable thing. So this is a man who just a couple of months ago not only became leader of the opposition, more than doubled his seats in the number of seats in the House of Commons, and a person for whom Canadians of all political stripes have a great deal of affection. So I think the Prime Minister extended the offer to the family. The family accepted it, the details of which were coordinated with the family, and I think Canadians' response, the overwhelming response of Canadians, speaks to the good judgment of the Prime Minister to offer it, the good grace of the Layton family to accept it, and the way that this has so far unfolded.
Is there precedent here, Minister? Should all leaders of the official opposition be offered a state funeral now? In other words, join that, is it governors general, prime ministers, and perhaps now leaders of the opposition?
Keep in mind, the concept of a state funeral is different. There's not an absolute formula that's the same for every single one of them. So if a sitting prime minister decides to offer the honor of a state funeral to a leader of the opposition, or to a governor general who has passed, or a past governor general who has passed away, the details of it and the scale of it is negotiated between the government of Canada and that family. And so that was certainly kept in mind with the Layton family in this circumstance. And so that's why all state funerals, they have some signature moments that are hallmarks of state funerals that are common between them, but sometimes there's a great deal of difference in the size of them. So, for example, when Romeo LeBlanc passed away, I think it was 2 years ago now, his funeral was very different than that of Raina Titian, which was very different than that of Pierre Trudeau, which is very different than that you're going to see on Saturday with Jack Layton. So they all have their own approach and size and scale and signature moments that are often tailored to the wishes of the person who's passed away and the wishes of the family.
You're working closely with the family on the details. We know on Saturday now at 2 p.m. as the details of the funeral emerge, we're hearing, we know Stephen Page, formerly of the Bare Naked Ladies, will play Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. We know Lorraine Segata will sing Rise Up. Stephen Lewis will deliver the eulogy. How closely does the Heritage work with the family to really get the details of how this will work, what will happen, what Canadians are seeing now? They've seen the body on Parliament Hill and the casket, and now, of course, Jack Layton's casket moves to Toronto. How closely do you have to work with the family on that?
Very closely. The wishes are made, the logistics are worked out, and obviously the department, my department, I often hate saying my department, it sounds Orwellian. The ministry for which I am responsible, the Department of Canadian Heritage, is responsible for the logistics of this. And obviously they have a long history and prehistory with all of the aspects of the details of this. So everything went into mode pretty quickly, as we know that this happened very suddenly, and the news came out very quickly, and it was not less than an hour after the news became public that Jack had passed away that my deputy minister informed informed me, and then he said we were in contact with the family. Obviously, there's an immediate grieving process. The family, we always respect the distance and the approach of these things, but the family made their wishes known, and we worked very closely with Mr. Layton's office, and I think the details have worked out very seamlessly. This is all about respecting the way in which Jack Layton and his family want him to be honored in his final public moments here as we head into Saturday's service.
Just a last question on this, because I do want to turn to this situation in South Korea, but very quickly. How quickly did the Prime Minister make the decision about the state funeral? Did he phone you to inform you about that? Did he take advice on that? Can you give us any details as to the consideration that went into that decision by the Prime Minister to offer the state funeral to the Layton family?
Well, I think the prerogative is entirely that of the Prime Minister, and he made his wishes known, extended the offer to the family accepted, and then the mechanics of it happened all within a day or day and a half of Jack's passing. But look, we all knew from that press conference that Jack had at the start of the summer that his health was very much being challenged by cancer, and so some of the thinking about what kind of an offer might be made by the Prime Minister, I'm sure, was in the Prime Minister's mind. But this has all happened, I think, very quickly, very seamlessly, and in the best ways to respect a service that I think will be truly remarkable for a remarkable Canadian.
The guy was deeply political, and he had opponents, and even in death, the grief, the coverage of the grief. There's been a lot of the fact that there's a state funeral, the fact that people want to know why this happened. Politics has never left this. Has anything surprised you about the reaction?
Look, these are large public moments, and Jack was I say Jack. That's part of the dynamic of this is that everybody talks about Jack Layton as just Jack, because it wasn't just a marketing thing about how he approached his campaigns, but that's how he wanted to be referred to. I mean, he was the Honourable Jack Layton, PC MP. He was a Privy Councillor, but everybody just said Jack because he was a very down-to-earth, thoroughly decent guy who wanted that kind of a relationship with all Canadians, whether he was speaking to a Governor General, a Prime Minister, or if he was speaking to a constituent who was down on his luck looking for a hand. So he was just that kind of guy. Yes, I mean, obviously there's been debate about a column, Christy Blatchford's column, and people who who may be criticizing the thoroughness of the coverage of the CBC. But look, this is a democracy with free speech and free access to debate these kinds of questions, and it's fine. It's not the end of the world. People can have these kinds of debates. Yeah. The state funeral, the cost of this, full disclosure, it's about $200,000. So I mean, this is taxpayers' money being spent for a very large public event, and people are going to have opinions about how taxpayers' money is spent, and that's all part and parcel of a democracy. And I think it's fine. I don't.
That is, by the way, that is it. $200,000 is the government cost for the state funeral.
Within the existing funding envelopes of the government, we'll make adjustments within my department about how we absorb those costs, but that's about what it costs. Yeah.